we can go ahead and get started. I hope everybody's had a good day so far here at InfoSeCon. And I guess as you're reading through the options of things to come through to or go to the sessions today, hopefully this one's kind of a cool, interesting one. We also love, we're talking about managing IT and security audits and the do's and don'ts, some insider tips. Hopefully you guys might have some insider tips. Do we have any team members here that deal with audit often? Okay, cool. Do we have any auditors here? Any? Okay, so watch out for those folks. They're
Who
cool.
Who likes audits?
They're cool sometimes.
Who dislikes them?
Who dislikes audits? Okay, we got a lot of hands on that side. Okay, well let's change your mind on that maybe. I don't know. We'll see. That would be a hard one. So, let me introduce Larry Stewart. Larry's been through about every kind of compliance framework you can imagine: GDPR, FISMA, NIST, PCI. So if you ever wanted to know how to juggle all those different requirements, Larry's kind of your guy. So Larry, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, hi. I'm currently the Associate Director at DCRI, at a subgroup of the overall Duke University School of Medicine. I oversee the security, compliance, and privacy team, and we deal a lot with obviously regulatory requirements and FISMA. We have our own GovCloud environment and NIST 800, GDPR, all of that, and we've been nailed. I won't lie to that. I mean, we have lots of sponsor audits that come in. They ask all kinds of questions. So I really thought that this was a great topic to really kind of prep people on, ask questions. I would love to hear. I mean, we have tons of slides here, but if you have a topic that you want to bring it up. This is really an open forum as well to answer kind of questions and maybe use experience, because I think that's how we learn to become better educated in how to handle audits. And there's a trick to it and a process to it. So besides just being prepared. So, Zach?
Yeah, thanks, Larry. And Zach Shelton, and this, if you're wondering, that doesn't look like him. It is an AI photo. I like to say it is the one with the least amount of double chin, so that's why I chose that one. But I'm a principal at Forvis Mazars, and it's a professional service and accounting firm. I work in our consulting teams in our IT risk compliance practice. I don't know if you've heard of Forvis Mazar. What's a Forvis Mazar? We're change our name a lot, so we've done a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the past few years. I've been with the firm for 18 years, and it's great to see everybody here. These are some of the focus areas that I work on: IT audit, SOX, cybersecurity, kind of technical pen testing stuff, and then also recently a lot more AI risk and governance kind of assessments. So it's a little bit about my background. Based here in Raleigh, work with teams kind of all over the country, and excited to be here. I have a lot of my former coworkers here today, so it's cool to see them. Hopefully y'all chime in and give us some examples of do's and don'ts that are better than Zach's examples. So objectives for our course today, just really kind of equipping IT folks and security practitioners with some kind of practical insights related to how can you have a better audit experience, if there's such a thing. There is such a thing. How you can better prepare for audits, responding to auditors that seem rude, sometimes. Do they ever seem rude? Okay. Yes. Okay. You let us know, you tell us how you feel. And common mistakes to avoid, tips and tricks to streamline your evidence collection and providing evidence to auditors, and then kind of turning audits into opportunities for improvements. So I know we have several folks in here that also do audit, or internal audits potentially. So potentially they can help us with some of their thoughts of what works well for them too. So that we do have a couple takeaways that we'd love to kind of highlight here, and hopefully you can get some of this out of this session. And first off, I'm really excited you all showed up. I was like, is anyone going to come to this session? It sounds kind of like not exciting, but hopefully we can make it exciting for you guys. So kind of like an audit readiness, a little bit of a playbook, what to expect, a top 5 of do's and don'ts, And these are just our do's and don'ts. We didn't this isn't like in a book somewhere that says these are the actual audit do's and don'ts, so you don't have to write this down. Practical tips for evidence collection. I think that one's probably really helpful for folks. An engineer's role in audit success, and then turning findings into improvements, not just from a check-the-box perspective, but just really trying to spin a finding into something that can be helpful for you. Always trying to find the silver lining sometimes. And when we do audits, a lot of times if we find someone that's not really interested or excited about the finding that we have, we try to potentially reword the finding or figure out what would be more valuable for that finding to provide to the personnel or team member that would be impacted by the finding. So with that, I will pass it over to Larry, and don't know if the clicker, there it goes.
There we go.
To talk about some audit readiness playbook. We put really tiny font, and we got the smallest projector in town, so hopefully y'all can see this. So Larry?
Yeah, thank you, Zach. So again, for people that are like engineers and they have all of these playbooks and run books, we thought kind of basing an audit off of that type of thought process is really going to be helpful. So we have 6 steps here. Really, when it comes to, you have to start at the beginning. You have to think about your governance and your documentation. You got to make sure you have all your policies available. You should know what your policies are as well. I mean, just don't pull them up and say, look at them the day before. You should have, if you know what your controls that you're mapping to, that's a good thing to have. If you need to know your roles and responsibility, that is the most critical to me, is because you're going to have an engineer or you're going to have a business person, and they're saying, well, I don't do that, that's this person, and that person's no place to be found. You need to make sure that when you go into an audit, you have all the appropriate people present, and you know what their roles are. Access, account, identity management, user access to reviews, obviously those things are going to be really critical in the process. You have to be able to explain how that access process really works. You want to make sure that you address the privilege level access. You think about also service accounts, all the types of access. So, auditors will start digging when they start seeing something. Change management, those are obviously the very simple items, show your right tickets. If you can show those configuration baselines, how are you measuring that change, or what are those standards that you're going against? Those are going to be really critical. That's also kind of going in your procedures and policies and standards. Your patch management reports, anything like that, or how you actually implement your patches, what your change cycle is on those.
And I might chime in real quick on the change management piece and ask the audience, does anyone in here kind of work with your policies, the policy documents at your companies or firms? We've got some folks. And so when auditors are doing their auditing, a lot of times they're auditing to your policy or what you've said is in place. And so something that a lot of times we'll find in audit findings is that someone wrote up this big, beautiful policy and we don't actually do things that way. And so a big recommendation in that section I always think is, if you're not doing something that aligns with the policy and what you're doing is great and works for you in the operations, change the policy. And then an auditor can't necessarily give you a hard time unless it's an external or a SOX audit where they have to. But most audits, sorry, there's always caveats in accounting. But most times that they're going to be testing to your policies and procedures, and then your answer is, we don't have that because that's not how our policy says to do it, and it's the best answer ever. So, sorry, Larry.
No, great. When we're also thinking about the step 4 here is your log files, your logging, your incident responses, your dashboards that you can show. Auditors, like executives, they love pretty pictures. They love to be able to see those things. It kind of gives them this warm fuzzy. So if you can produce that and actually talk to them and walk them through it and show how, and kind of relate your operations back to those dashboards and show how those notifications, that really goes a long way. So you're actually walking the auditor through that process, and you're actually kind of answering some of their questions before they're even have a chance to ask you something. Obviously, your incident response, your breach notifications, be prepared to have those available. If you have any, if you haven't had any, state that up front. And if they say, well, do you have a policy? How would you do that? Have you done any kind of simulations? You want to make sure you be prepared and you have those things. Obviously, business continuity, disaster recovery. I can tell you every audit I've ever been part of, and I've actually audited too. It's like, show me your BCP, show me your DR, what did you do? Have that ready. And you'd be surprised, you need to be able to have those documentations. You need to show proof. When was it done? Who signed off? Who participated? All of that stuff. It's so critical. And then finally, as our favorite subject is always vendors and vendor inventories and what's the impact, the BIAs of those vendors. You need to make sure that you have a good process, because right now, obviously, vendors are always going to be that other threat to your company. So you have to have a good process on how you manage those. You can't say, well, we do this, and then the auditor's going to actually come back and say, well, how often do you reassess? And you want to be prepared for those type of questions. You want to have a plan and be able to show that you're constantly going forward. Go ahead.
Cool. And I guess this next slide, I'm going to see, I think maybe I can zoom in a little bit here. We'll see. It's oh, yeah. Can y'all see that? Cool.
Oh, there
That's
we
a little
go.
bit better.
Ooh.
Okay, cool. So continuing this kind of same topic, I wish I could not make it quite as zoomed. Well, you get one zoom, that's it. Okay. So completeness and accuracy. Has anybody heard of completeness and accuracy before? And anyone hate completeness and accuracy? Me? And I see some of the auditors here. The auditor jokes, guys. This is what makes us laugh. We're fun at parties. We are fun at parties, right? So completeness is really tied to your evidence matching the scope of what your audit procedure is. And so you want an item to be complete. And when auditors are reviewing some data that you provided them, they want to say, hey, how do we know this is a complete population? A few years back, a lot of folks had challenges with change management from a completeness. It was very challenging to kind of confirm, hey, these are all of our change tickets, or these are all the changes that actually occurred in the system. How do we know that matches one-to-one for what's in the change ticketing system? So that's kind of part of that completeness topic there. And if you can get completeness and accuracy, your auditors are going to love you, because we barely get it sometimes right now. So no missing policies, logs, reports, accuracy. And it kind of is exactly what it sounds like. It really needs to be kind of time-stamped. If you're doing a screenshot, please just give it down to the date and time in your bottom corner of your computer,
So
if that's where it is. And
I will say,
Yeah.
just a really cool tool I always use. I mean, every company I go to is Snagit. And if you have that, or if you don't have it, get it. If you're having to produce audit evidence, because there's a tool on there that you can actually do a screenshot. And then you can say, there's like an effect or something like that, and it'll say, give metadata. And it will tell you literally the IP address, the machine type, the date and time it was pulled, the OS, a whole bunch of stuff and it will attach it right to the screenshot. So.
no, that's really cool. Snag it. But yeah, so the idea of a timestamp if you're doing a screenshot, making sure you're providing them unaltered data. So sometimes we might get say, hey, can you give us a list of all your changes? And your change list is really messy. And you're like, I'll just filter this and sort it and make it look prettier and look how good my audit evidence looks. Well, the auditor actually hates that, because now they have to come back and say, actually, we really need the original. So while it's super nice, I also like pretty charts and stuff. Try to keep it in like the original state that kind of exports from the system. Accuracy also, we like to kind of see maybe some screenshots of how you set the query up potentially in the system to pull that data out as well. So that kind of ties to completeness and accuracy as well. Any thoughts or questions on completeness and accuracy? I feel like we got one back in the back. Yeah.
Actually, a question about screenshots.
Okay.
They're terribly manual, which is time consuming. Like stacking the grades, rather than metadata that really adds up. What are some other tools that would be complete job? Do a list of URLs to graph screenshots on.
Okay. So I think if I heard you correctly over this loud air handler, what are other, you say screenshots can be very, very manual. Is there a better way? Is there some kind of automated way you can set up screenshots? Sure. So I'm not in doing the screenshots these days, so I don't know that I have a great example, but I do know some of my staff, they have some, it might be Snagit, where it automatically, every time a screen changes, it automatically is capturing the screens for you and putting it in a folder for you. I don't know if anyone that uses Snagit knows. Okay, so Gordon here says that you can do it. He was loving the Snagit topic. So yeah, we got to, hopefully that's helpful there. Maybe Snagit again. I wish I was a rep for Snagit right now. Yeah.
Speaking of screenshots, are firms ever going to move away from the screenshot method?
Man, that's a great question, and I have my crystal ball back here, and I was like thinking, I was looking at it earlier, but I think, I don't know. I think we're gonna probably still have screenshots for a while. I'm sure someone has some. Anybody have any ideas of how to not do screenshots that are great? Yeah.
What was the question?
Oh, sorry. The question was, are we ever going to not have to do screenshots? Or audits going to get?
Like you were saying, a better way to pull the data that is
Sure.
the source, and you know it's legit without having to take screenshots.
So sometimes I'll also mention, sometimes in audits, if you can grant some type of read-only access to an auditor, sometimes you can just say, hey, go pull it yourself. Sure, when you do that, they might dig around in an area you don't want them to. So be careful about that. But depending on the auditor, you know.
Well, but you also have to think about, you know, the audit work papers and the audit itself becomes this proof of evidence over time. So, you know, 3 years from now, when something does happen, they need to be able to see where that came from, and that, unfortunately, that picture is worth 1,000 words. So unless you can replicate that process either through some kind of automation or some kind of report or log file, and you give them all of that, I mean, it's something that's probably not going to go away for a bit.
I guess I'll also just thought from that discussion is a lot of our audit evidence of like meetings that we'll have now are on like the Microsoft Teams meeting, and it's someone screen sharing, and we'll just kind of record the screen share, and then instead of you having to do screenshots for us, the staff could potentially be screenshotting during the screen share or on a recording later. Maybe, you know, from an audit, we're always trying to, well, at least for us, we're always trying to find ways to lessen impact of audit effort to our auditees, and that's one way I guess we're kind of doing that. But Jacob, you mentioned you raised your hand like you had an idea.
No, you said both of them.
So, okay, cool.
Granting read-only access.
Granting read-only access.
Right.
Okay.
Recording screen shares so that you
Perfect.
can do manual screenshotting later.
Okay. Jacob used to work with me, so
Yeah. Same thing.
he taught me that. So cool. So hopefully that makes sense. Great question. Did we have another question over here? Yeah.
Not necessarily a question, but I wanted to get your opinion on what do you think about live testing? Because that's what my team does. They're very much against the taking screenshots and they do third-party audits.
Okay.
The audits, so my vendors, they really don't want to send screenshots.
Yeah.
They also don't want to report it. So we go a lot of live testing.
Sure.
and reporting out.
Yeah, so live testing is definitely another option instead of screenshots, especially if you're working with a vendor that has decided that they're not willing to provide you with actual screenshots. So you're kind of almost viewing the audit over their shoulder, sort of, even if it's on video. And in those cases, you would just need to, I bet what you do is you really have to document in a narrative format what you did, who you met with, and what they showed you. And you know, a caveat that we weren't able to get the actual screenshots because of the sensitivity of the data or whatnot. Sure. Great point. Any other thoughts on that one?
One thought
Yeah.
I had, and it goes along with the pitfalls of read-only access, is that auditors will go look for things that maybe they're not supposed to. But if you're using documents, spreadsheets, or whatever as your evidence, delete the stuff on the other tabs that they don't need to see.
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
that's about being prepared. You know
That's
what
right.
evidence you have already. I mean, don't walk into the audit. I mean, we'll cover this a little, but I'll just go out there and say it right now is don't just walk in an audit and say, okay, well, here's my stuff. Be prepared. Have it already, look at it. I mean, that's going to be the best advice right there.
Great point. All right, so we also have consistency and alignment here. Gosh, I'm not really good at this mouse. I promise I've used a mouse before. But consistency, So you really want your responses that you're saying kind of do align to the documentation. So don't like fluff it up and make it sound way better than it is. Just be, hey, this is how we do it. This is how it's going to be in the evidence. And also, I'll tell you that auditors are going to give you less issues. If you tell them that you're doing it some wonderful, robust way, and then the evidence doesn't prove that out, they're going to say, well, where's the evidence that proves that? And so just kind of tell them like it is, and they'll hopefully be able to test it like it is. If they figure out that there's some type of design issue of how the control is designed, they can document it that way, but it's better to have a design potential issue than an actual finding, in my opinion. So alignment, controls mapping to different types of frameworks. Does anybody map their controls to frameworks? Great, okay, great. There's a lot of cool tools out there that'll help you map against a lot of different frameworks. Every time you kind of update your controls or risk control matrices, it's really good to do some mapping to different types of standards. And then you want your evidence to kind of demonstrate, again, I mentioned a second ago, that the control is designed effectively. So maybe a policy exists as a light example there. And then that it's operating effectively, so it's actually being performed as you intended it. So again, you don't want to say that you've designed it this robust, super way, and you're only doing it, the Ferrari, and you're doing it the Camry. Just tell them, no, we're doing the Camry way. So when they test it, they know they're getting the Camry, which is also great, right?
One other thing I was going to say about the control mapping, how many people have to attest to multiple frameworks, like PCI and then SOC 2 or something like that? Yeah.
A lot of folks.
And then, but if you think about it, the tests are the same, or the controls are the same, but they're being asked by different auditors. So if you plan ahead and you think, test once, apply many type of thing, that's really what that mapping is. So really understand what your controls are and how they map, so that when that evidence comes in, or those auditors, you've already pulled it for one audit, you could possibly share it with another. It could be a little bit of a scoping, like the systems, but hopefully you got most of it. Like access reviews are probably a great way of doing that. You know what, almost every audit or every framework is requiring something, and you can just lever that over and over and over. So you don't have to go reinvent that work. Great
point. And then I guess quickly I'll just see if I can slide this over here. So just kind of improvement. Are you tracking remediation? Are you showing continuous progress on potential findings? You hopefully are able to be becoming in agreement with your auditor on any findings that they might have. Audit works really hard on making sure that they get management team members or first line team members on board with what the findings are. If you have issues with that, talk to whoever that person's boss is in audit to say, hey, they're not being flexible in their audit. Some things, very strict compliance items, sometimes there's a hard line, but a lot of audit, and any auditors in here that did like accounting degrees understand there is a gray area in auditing, and that's that judgment that the auditor can bring to the audit. So, but again, just tracking your remediation efforts and kind of keeping track of those year to year. What do you have on the docket to kind of clean up? Were you unable to and you need to kick something to next year, or does it end up no longer being relevant? And you really kind of just let the audit teams know, hey, we went some other route now. That's not even really an issue for us anymore. So, any other thoughts, questions on this slide here? I'll see if I can get back. Yeah, we got one more question here. Yeah.
Well, just a comment. I know
Comment?
Our organization, we found it handy that even if you're not going to go for certification or to participate in an audit, go ahead and align with a framework.
Mm-hmm.
17001 or something like that. Go ahead and set it up because it tells you how to do it almost
Sure.
step by step.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just, even if you never use it, it's already there. And if you do use it, you got it.
Great.
That's
yeah.
right.
So that's helped us a lot.
Completely agree. Especially if you're like looking to grow in your company or organization's looking to grow into different markets. There's a lot of different state regulations, especially around data privacy. So if you're like, hey, we might be growing into this state with something that we're going to be selling, maybe should we look for those regulations that we could potentially try to align things to while we're updating things. So cool. The next thing we do is just kind of have a little discussion. I'd love to, and we've already had some really awesome discussion. This is great. So I'd love to know, and again, super tiny font. See if I can zoom in here for you guys. So what are your fears about audit? Anybody have any fears?
Fail?
That you're gonna fail?
Okay.
Yeah. Neff, you have any fears?
I don't know if it's necessarily a fear, but I was just wondering, especially from like an external audit perspective, what have y'all been seeing or what are your expectations for your auditees when it comes to how their data is being used with third parties when you're thinking about like AI and how
Sure.
that data is being used for, you know, models or inferences, like are you seeing more stock reports updating CBDCs, right? Specifically to what their customer's responsibility is for that data and what their responsibility is. Just wondering from an external audit perspective.
I think the answer to that question, Neff, and that was a great question. Neff also used to be on my team, so we work a lot together over the years. The question was really about how has different types of technologies kind of progressing or changing the focus in audits, maybe like AI and specifically maybe for your vendor management or vendors that you're utilizing. And if you walk around the upstairs little sales area, I bet you 99% of those have an AI word on their banner there, and which is great. That just means people aren't trying not to get left behind in the AI arena. But I guess AI does pose a lot of risks to our data, and any vendor that you're using that uses some type of AI, you want to make sure you're understanding, is our data going to be included in some kind of model build out? Is it potentially somehow leaking our data to your other customers? Very similar to, you want your data to be just private in your company. So it is certainly something I think that we'll continue to see. I don't know that I've seen any CUECs or if you're familiar with SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports, there's complementary user entity report or controls where you were supposed to do these controls to make the SOC report kind of work for the company. I wouldn't be surprised though if they added some CUECs in the near future. That's a great. I don't know if has anybody in here seen any CUECs related to AI use so far? No? Cool.
I will say this, just recently, we've had a sponsor audit come in, do a pre-audit questionnaire for us. First time I've seen this is, it was like literally 2.5 pages of AI questions to us on how we're leveraging AI and all this. Luckily, we were able to say, no, we're not, based off of how we structured and scoped it. And that's obviously a big piece of it. But to go back to about how do you address the question in AI, here's just a quick thought process on that is, I would actually pull down those questionnaires about AI and ask yourself, what are the answers? What do we need to produce for that? And then create the gap back to that and say, can we do that? And start from there. Because this is going to start hitting, I almost guarantee in 2026, it's going to be on the forefront of every audit, and they're going to start asking how you do. So you got to be prepared how you want to answer those questions.
Yeah, that's right. Great question, Neff. Thanks. Some other ones here. What are your biggest challenges related to the audit process? Anybody have any challenges or annoyances? Problem? No, everybody loves audit. That's really great. Okay.
That's good.
Just kidding. Oh no.
We generally do pretty well with them internally. When the external audit team changes from year to year, that is
Very
disruptive.
frustrating. Sure.
We were with an audit firm for a long time with generally the same folks, maybe a different person in or out from year to year, but we knew them, they understood our business.
Sure.
And some of our controls are going to be different. Some of our control implementations are going to be different than in another organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so having to re-explain that, recontextualize, that gets tiresome.
Sure.
And the person still doesn't understand it. Right when they get it, maybe they have a different person in the next week. So resource, and I get it. It's just how it is. There's time constraints.
I will even, what about this scenario though? I mean, how many people have heard, if you're in the business and you're saying, well, hey, we're a very innovative company, we're automating this, we're doing this, and the auditor comes in and they're kind of like auditing to 1990 standards and say, well, show me that approval. Well, it's automated, it goes through a whole process. It can't go, and that's a hard concept sometimes for auditors because they're kind of stuck in their ways. So back to your point, you're going to have to really go through and describe that process. And think about, if you describe the process and you think about like what are the controls, so the choke points. That's the point that you have to get to the auditor, you know, and then you say that's how we control this, and explain it that way. And that's how you can get them out of the 1990s and into the
And usually it's
Full.
fine, just takes a conversation.
right.
Sure.
Right.
I also say flow charts maybe for things, especially if you have a new auditor coming in that you haven't used before. If you have any flow charts or processes or things, and you can just say, hey, before the meeting we're going to meet to tell you about everything, can y'all spend some time reviewing these flow charts so you'll have like a preview of how the processes work. You know, clients don't like to train the auditors, and that's your chance to pass some of that back to them. And auditors usually love getting a good flow chart to understand, you know, before a meeting. So, yeah, Visio diagram. Okay, we got a. Sure.
I've made a flow chart, like he was saying, or like you suggested.
Okay, you made a flow chart.
Specifically for auditors to help them to understand the process so that I can, and I'll plaster in red. This is made for the auditor.
Perfect.
This is not an official document.
I love it.
That's
That's good.
Like, this is your document. I'm
Yeah.
putting. I was like, so I put on there, this is not official.
Yeah.
It's for you.
I love it.
Specifically.
That's fantastic.
And they're usually okay with it.
That's right.
Just laughing.
So just so you know, auditors also get audited, and like the PCAOB, Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, did I say that right? They come in and audit us, and so we also get to the joys of dealing with being audited. But we love to give them flow charts. Be like, here's all our flow charts of everything, so you can understand it, and hopefully it answers a lot more questions. So I don't know, flow charts for me, that direction seem to help out a lot.
Yeah.
So, flow charts, cool. And then I guess another question here: do you think your company has a firm handle on audit do's and don'ts? Do you feel like you've got a pretty decent audit culture? I see some shake heads, yes. Got a serious shake head, no. You know, I saw that.
I'm in governance, so having auditors try and write findings and observations against governance, it's
Frustrating.
squishy.
It is.
It's squishy.
Right.
Well, I would say being in governance, I love when someone gives me feedback of, could you reword the finding to this? They're not always going to be able to do that, but sometimes they can, and I bet you, especially earlier in their career, auditors are going to really appreciate you giving some info like that to help them out. So, all right. Well, oh, we got one more.
Yeah, be polite, be on time.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you.
Be there before the
Yeah.
call starts.
Oh, that never happens
We
for me.
generally
But
know we generally know what we're going to be providing. We're given a list ahead of time,
Sure.
Right.
And it's a similar list from year to year. We keep everything from year to year. We name it the same.
Mhm.
If we provided a certain way last year and they accepted it, we're going to provide the exact same way that, screenshot of the query, screenshot of the population, whatever sampling they need. Same way, exactly, every time. So we drew arrows last time, draw arrows this time.
that's right. I love it.
Right.
You know, if they're expecting a risk assessment, give them something that has some risk and some load. I mean, it
Yeah.
needs to look like it. I mean, this sounds
I
silly.
love how you made that. Give them make something up that you know has some risks. They'll like
I mean,
it.
it's
No,
not
but
making up. I mean, don't give an auditor something that doesn't look like the person.
Well, what
That's
about
true,
like
yeah.
you give them a screenshot and then, this is the screenshot, and you just kind of like, if you don't draw the pictures, they're not going to remember, or they're not going to kind of follow it. You know it.
Yeah.
You know, your engineers know what that screenshot's saying, or, you know, what that code means, but the auditor won't. So you have to draw the lines. You have to walk them through that process. And, you know, that will go a million ways. I always think if I can lead the auditor down through the process, chances are he or she won't come with any findings. I mean, obviously there's something, you know, obvious, yeah, they'll find something, but 9 times out of 10, they won't. They'll just say, okay, great, this passes.
And it makes you feel empowered and prepared, and like you're leading the audit.
Right.
And they're just checking on what you've been doing.
Precisely.
And if you find something, well, darn it,
yeah, that's right.
that sucks.
Say
That
thank you.
happens. We're
Yeah.
human.
And I tell them up
We're
front,
human.
we don't want you to find something, but if you do, we're glad you did.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll
Then we
figure it
can
out.
improve.
It's good.
Well, and I believe you mentioned this, and somebody else mentioned this, is that the fear of the audit is, you know, probably, you know, oh, they're going to find something. What does that mean? And I really believe that you have to turn that around and make it an opportunity, especially if you're saying, well, we don't have resources. You know, make that auditor put in their findings, say insufficient resources. you know, and then all of a sudden it bubbles up and says, hey, wait a second. And then leadership has to say, how do we answer insufficient research? By not letting people go, maybe by hiring people or putting something in place, buying a better tool, whatever.
This is great. So we're about halfway through, and we've got 15-ish minutes left, so we'll try to speed it up here. But really, I would rather you guys chime in and share your stories than anything. But we'll jump forward here on some audit do's.
Yeah.
And yeah, Larry, you want to?
I think we covered a lot of this stuff, but I mean, it's like, you know, maintaining your documentation, having always ready a common repository numbered and all that stuff. Provide, you know, be complete with all your evidence. Make sure you know what it is. You know, just verify the evidence. You know, don't go in there 2 minutes before and say, okay, I'm grabbing that screenshot for the very first time, and you haven't even looked at it. You know, because the auditor is going to be studying that. So you need to be able to verify that. You know, understanding your control environment, understanding what controls or what they're asking for in those controls. You know, if you have a control statement that says that, you know, access reviews are approved, you know, every 6 months or reviewed every 6 months or every month, well, you better show that the access review was done this day, and this day. You know, and you know, I've seen auditors, well, this was a day after a month. You know, they could be nitpicky about that, but that could be a finding, you know, so you didn't do it in a timely fashion or something like that. But just be prepared with that.
Again, on the timely thing, if your policy says you do it in 3 days, are you setting yourself up for failure because you're not going to get it done in 3 days? Maybe say we want this is typically done in 3 days, but we give people up to 15 days. You know, just be, you know, generous on yourself maybe, unless you find the risk is too great to have bigger timelines. But auditors are going to test to whatever your program or policy says.
Right. I'll give you another example, just to that very point, just, you know, like training, you know, annual certification or like security training and all that stuff. Well, if you have in your policy, everyone in the company is supposed to complete their annual certification every year or something like that, all 100%, then the auditor is going to go through and do a sample and look for everyone that, you know, make sure that it was 100%. But if in your policy that leadership says we strive for a 95 completion, 95%, that gives you some wiggle room. And it's perfectly fine because it's in your policy. So
yeah, that's a really good example. And again, there might be certain compliance requirements if you're doing a certain type of audits, very unique, and it has some timeliness items built into the requirements. That's a little different than, hey, these are our policies and procedures for a typical internal or even external audit.
Yeah.
Great point.
And just lastly, I mean, as we've already said, you know, just be honest. If you see something, you know, avoid to say, oops, but say, you know what, this is wrong. Own it. Just take it. Don't fight it. Don't argue it. Don't try to defend it. Just let it happen. And then it'll come up, you know, and then you react later. You provide a management response. But don't start getting into like a fist fight with them or arguing over a small point.
I mean,
it's just not worth it.
Audit's not that serious. You don't want to be fist fighting. But is anyone getting fist fights from auditors? It's like, Gordon is like, yes. He's going to throw down. All right.
It's been close.
It's been close. Okay, you know. Oh, you got another question back there? Or point? How do you bridge the gap from when there's conflict in an audit? That's a great question, and I don't know that it's something that's easy to teach. I don't know.
I think
From an audit perspective.
I think it's always go back to the control, go back to your policies. You know, think about the design, think about what you're trying to prove. If you're wrong, or if the auditor sees it one way and you know it's not that way, then it's really up to you to try to figure out, well, what is the missing gap? And just try to walk through that process. Get to understand, make sure that they can see it from your lens. Because realize they don't know your business. You guys know your business. And it's like telling a story, or think about like you're writing an email sometimes, or a big long report. Well, you make an assumption that they know the backstory, but they don't. So sometimes you have to be able to fill that in for
Sure.
them to make them, do that transition and get to the same state that you're in.
And so I guess also I'll add to that, Larry, if you come across like maybe an audit finding that you as the auditee you don't really agree with, you say, hey, I just showed you all these compensating controls, or I showed you this is how we do it, and this does align with the policy, and I don't know why you auditor are not understanding what I'm trying to tell you right now. Don't be afraid to just say, hey, could you run this up the flagpole on your team, and I don't know, your audit manager or someone above, and just say, I think that it'd be important for us to just make sure we have as much clarity as we can on this because we're not quite on board with the finding. There sometimes it might be a agree to disagree, and everyone there might just end and take away with the disagreement. But I don't think that you should hesitate to ask that question if you really feel strongly against someone's finding for you. And I mean, it's pretty rare when someone disagrees with the finding that we end up not being able to figure out a way either to adjust the finding, or maybe we didn't get all the right evidence, or we missed something. So auditors are human also. They also can make mistakes. So they're not here to just say, gotcha. There are some auditors maybe, but but most of us hopefully are not that way. And we're really kind of just, also doing our jobs. So, but great point.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
This is probably more for the third party. I noticed you don't have like the assessment for your audit. Do you recommend that?
I'm so sorry, I can barely hear you.
Do you recommend doing a pre-assessment, like a third-party assessment before the third-party audit?
I think that's, yeah, so the question was, do you recommend doing a pre-assessment before a third-party auditor kind of comes in to do something? And that's a great idea if you want to save some money on having to redo an audit and have a lot of failures. I used to do a lot of SOC reporting audits, SOC 1 and SOC 2 audits, and very rarely do people just say, we're going to just go do the SOC audit. We got everything figured out. Because you have to pay the bill on the SOC audit even if it's a terrible, the report's a completely failed report, because they will come after you for the money, right? So again, it just spending some time up front, potentially like what we do, we call readiness assessments for our audits. You can either do them internally or you can have someone assist you with it externally. Our company, like these firms, accounting firms, can do these readiness assessments and then also do the actual audit. So then they're kind of saying, well, this would be a finding. Well, this would be a finding. And here's how you can fix that or adjust that so there's no finding. And then you kind of get to that point, hopefully when you get to the audit, you're real confident that, well, they told us everything was going to be great now, that we just, if we go forward with these steps. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, and I also want to add, there's a distinction between auditing and assessment.
Sure.
For a collaborative fiscal consultant.
Yep.
They're there to help you through it as opposed to an audit. So
Yep.
if you want someone to work with you or to gauge your findings and have dialogue with you and help you with that effort, then the assessment will be beneficial.
Perfect point. And if you didn't hear, he was saying that the word audit versus assessment seems a little bit more collaborative, and it really is.
Because y'all be coming to audit. Assessment.
That's right. Sometimes we do assessments, and sometimes
Okay.
clients will come to us and ask, hey, I want to do this new type of audit that we've never done before. Can y'all help us with it? But I don't want to call it an audit this year because the auditees are going to be really mad. And audit also has to, figure out how to play. They don't want you like scratching their car up and things you want to do. So I do like that idea. And when we do have those, we are real clear every time we're talking. This is an assessment. It's a gap assessment. We're just trying to be ready for when we might do a real audit next year on this topic. So you're a really good point. Especially if it's a very new topic for audit that you have not done before, some type of assessment or gap assessment is a great path first.
Excuse me, what did you take on SOC 2? Like, for instance, like the SOC 2 process is a very lengthy process.
Mhm.
It's, let's say, 6 months, 7 weeks. But then we still have customers that the SOC 2 is not sufficient, and they still be like, no, we don't accept the SOC 2 as
Yeah.
a valid assessment, per se. You still want to go through the entire show me, share your screen, provide evidence.
Sure.
What do you think on that? What do you think about the future of KYKP? No KYKP, KBP in that end.
Sure. So I think part of this question was, and we have 5 minutes left. So when you do a SOC report and you're doing a SOC report to give to your customers, and you still have customers like this is not enough, or the time period of this is not going to cover for us. And you're like, we just spent all this time and effort and money, and you're telling us you don't want it? This isn't enough? So I guess what I'd say is there's a couple different things you can do is share with some of your biggest customers, this is our planned scope for our SOC report. Can you please give us feedback from your internal auditors or risk teams if this is going to be covering what you need? And if they come back with they never get back to you, then you can always say later, well, y'all gave us no feedback earlier, so we went with this, which probably would be the case in a lot of scenarios. But also you could get some things like, hey, we want you to cover this, or we really need this, or we require all our vendors to have this. But when you do give very specific things like that, sometimes they might try to charge some of that back to you and say, hey, well, that's an extra cost for us, so we might bring that back to you. But I don't know, that's just one thought or idea I have on that.
That do not have like a SOC 2 or something like that. We make sure that it's inside of the contract, and we also specify how long that SOC 2 has to be measured through. So it has to like be over a 6-month period or whatever the period may be that we feel comfortable that would give us a reasonable assessment. So you can get that into that language of that contract. That will cover you as well.
And you might already have that in the contract, and you're just trying to figure out how to handle it. Oh, okay. Yeah, great point.
Yeah.
Cool. We also have some audit don'ts, and we'll just run through these real quick. We talked about a lot of these already, but don't provide more than that's requested. If they ask for a document and you've got 15 other tabs and they only need tab 1, you just give them just the tab. You don't need someone wasting their time reviewing a bunch of stuff that's not what they need. And auditors really shouldn't need a bunch of extra stuff. I think you'll find earlier in the career staff, and I don't know why they're this short, but earlier in the career team members, they might get carried away looking at stuff that's not relevant to the audit and get lost in that. So giving them exactly what they need and only what they need. If they ask for something and they ask wrong, don't hesitate to say, hey, are you sure it's not this? Because last year this is what we gave you. So you're getting what you need. Try not to create evidence after the fact. So if they're asking you for the change tickets for 2 weeks ago, don't say, oh, shoot, we never did those that day. Let me go create them. Just say, hey, someone was out sick and we don't have that day. I mean, they're going to probably figure something out later, and then you're kind of, I don't know, it's not a good thing to do is create audit evidence afterwards. So yeah, try not to do that. Be careful about overusing jargon and acronyms. When people start in public accounting, there are like a bazillion acronyms, and you're just sitting there just Googling or whatever you do these days. Don't feel like you have to be defensive. It's very easy to want to be defensive over yourself, your work. You feel good about what you do in your day job, and you're like, hey, you're coming in here trying to tell me I'm doing something wrong, but this is what I do. Just be careful about that. You might feel defensive. Maybe don't show it to the auditor. Auditors kind of read that, and it's probably not going to make things easier for you. And then the last one here, don't ignore minor findings. Just say, hey, that is a minor finding or a low risk finding. Maybe we should consider that at some point if it's reasonable for us to handle. So,
Yeah.
Sorry, I know you were going to jump on this one, but anything?
No, I mean, just kind of really quickly wrap up some just things. If you have a central repository for your GRC tool, someplace to store all of this stuff, get it there, have something, be able to really walk through, the process. Just don't use like a Word document or, but walk them through it. Show them a lot. Conduct dry runs. I mean, back to the gentleman in the back here is be prepared, walk through the process. Map your controls, continuous monitoring of these things. If you can show how you do that, those are all great. And really afterwards, have a recap about that, just like a lessons learned, and figure out how you can do it better for the next time.
So I think with that, we'll just jump to the end here because we are out of time. But thanks again. It's so nice to get to chat with everybody and see you today. And
thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.